Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's agricultural sciences lesson. My name is Fezeka Zulu. This lesson is brought to you by the Northern Cape Department of Education in collaboration with the Programa Research and Development. Go to our knowledge or area of knowledge. It is based on economics. That is out of 105 marks in paper 2. Right? Our today's topic, that is your production factors. Subtopic, that is land as a production factor. Right? Today, learners, you are expected to be able to provide the definition of land as a production factor. Number 2, you should be able to identify functions of land. Number 3, indicate the economic characteristics of land. The last one, be able to describe the methods of increasing land productivity. As we all know, grade 10, you guys were introduced on land restitution, where land was restored. You were also introduced on land reform, where land was made available to previously advantaged people. You were also introduced on weathering and soil formation. You will need the knowledge on today's lesson, right? This is your baseline activity just to test your pre-knowledge or your previous knowledge, right? On this baseline activity, firstly, you are expected to provide the definition of production factors, that is out of 2 marks. Secondly, mention 4 factors of production. The last question, indicate the factor that acts as a collateral. Remember, we said we have 4 factors. So out of the 4, you need to indicate the one that acts as a collateral for 1 mark. Right? These are your baseline solutions, production factors, definition factors that act as inputs to produce outputs. Your 4 production factors, that is your land, labor, capital, and management. Out of the 4, the one that acts as collateral, that is your land, right? Let us move to terminology. So on today's lesson, you need to understand the land, be able to define arable land, activity, crop rotation, and intercropping. You need to understand these definitions, right? Before we move on, or I carry on with my today's lesson, right? Remember in term 1, term 2, you guys did animal nutrition, you did animal production, where you were just raising animals, right? But in term 3, our main focus is on economics, whereby we focus on the business side of agriculture. Meaning we don't just raise animals, we don't just grow crops for fun, but we are raising these, we are growing crops just to sell and make profit. And obviously there will be available or availability of food for everyone. But in exchange, someone is selling and someone is gaining the product, right? So in order for us to grow crops and raise livestock, it's very important that as a farmer, you need to put production factors in place. Meaning without these production factors, there will be no production, right? Now, what are these production factors? Now, production factors are resources used as inputs to produce outputs. So it's something that you put in order to get something. We put the production factors to get the production. We put the fertilizer to get the maize. We put the seed to get the maize. So these are production factors, right? So there are 4 production factors that we need in agriculture or in our economy, right? First one is the land. Second one, the labor. Third one, capital. And the last one is management. And always bear in mind that you need all the 4 production factors. If there is no land, there will be no production. If there is no labor, there will be no production. If there is no capital, there will be no production. Even if you can have the management, even if you can have the labor or land, but if there is no capital, there will be no production. Meaning, if there is no production, no availability of food. If there is no availability of food, no money or no profit. Always remember, we are doing economics, meaning we are making money. Remember what we said. We are looking at the business side of agriculture, meaning we are selling and others are buying these products, right? So our main focus today is on the land as a production factor, right? Let's just ignore the other three. Not because they are not important, they are important. But our main focus is on the land as a production factor. Now, what is the land? Right? A piece of ground or a primary natural resource used for agricultural production. In order to grow crops, we need the land. In order to raise livestock, of which are farm animals, we need the land. To build factories, we need the land, right? Now, it is also a factor with financial value, right? We'll discuss about that later on. Now, why is land important? That is the question that you need to ask yourself. Why is land important as a primary natural resource? Because it comes first before the other three production factors. Why is it important? Now, land is important for various reasons. Firstly, it provides us with space for crops to grow, meaning crops cannot grow if there is no land. We cannot just grow crops on the or in the air. We can't do that. We need the land. Secondly, land provides us with raw materials such as the wood, water, coal, oil, etc., etc. Thirdly, it supplies minerals such as nutrients, right? Minerals comes in different forms, right? Fourth one, provide food for animals and humans. Meaning without land, there will be no food. Without land, there will be no food for animals, and there will be no food for humans, right? Also provide space needed for agricultural activities, such as building factories where these agricultural products can be processed, moving from primary products to secondary products. And the last one, the very same land, it acts as a collateral. And someone will ask, why is land act as a collateral? Land can be used to obtain a loan from the bank. That is why it acts as a collateral. So these are the functions of land. These are the importance of land as a production factor. Right. As we all know that just like humans and animals, land has characteristics. And these characteristics are economical, meaning they contribute much to our economy. I hope you understand that. Just like animals and humans. We know that humans, we have those that are brown skinned, they are black, those that are white. Those are characteristics. That applies to land as well. Land has different characteristics. And these characteristics are economical. Why do we say they are economical? Because they contribute much to our economy. It should be a reminder to us as farmers or individuals that it's very important to manage the land. It's very important that land is correctly used, right? Let us get into these economic characteristics of land. Firstly, agricultural land is limited, or arable land is limited. Why do we say agricultural land is limited as one of the economic characteristics? Remember, we said characteristics are there to remind us to manage the land, right? To correctly use the land. Firstly, land is limited, or agricultural land is limited. What does that mean? It simply means that land cannot be produced and land cannot be expanded. There is no way that you can have powers to produce the land or expand the land. That is why agricultural land is limited. That is why arable land is limited. What do we mean by the term arable? It simply means it's not easy finding the land that has the ability to grow crops. It's not easy. Some soils or land are very rocky, and we all know that we cannot grow crops on a rocky soil or land. Right. Secondly, there's only a small piece of land that can be plowed, right? And then the last one, it is unavailable due to urban development. We all know that some land or some soils are reserved for human settlement, leading to very less land being available for agriculture, right? That is why land is limited. Right. Second economic characteristic, land is indestructible. What does land is indestructible mean and how? Right? Now, land is indestructible. It simply means that land can be degraded, but it can never be destroyed. How do we degrade the land? How do we degrade our land? By making sure that we practice monocropping, by applying overgrazing, by overusing inorganic fertilizers, by burning the soil. Those are practices or malpractices that degrade the soil. But can soil be destroyed? No, it can never be destroyed. Why? Because it has the ability to renew itself, right? How does the soil renew itself? You remember when we mentioned the weathering of rocks and the soil formation? That is the land renewing itself. And then let us go on our economic or another economic characteristic of land. Land is found in a specific environment or location. What does that mean? It simply means that land is fixed or land is immovable, meaning we cannot move it from one location to another. That is why it is important that whatever land you have should be well managed. It should be correctly used. Right? Another economic characteristic, land is restricted. Right? This simply tells us that the nature of soil restricts agricultural activities. We know that we have different soils. Some are rocky, some are sandy, some are clay, right? So only grow in certain types of soil, meaning not every soil has the ability to grow crops. That is why land is restricted, meaning it restricts other agricultural activities, right? Another economic characteristics, land is durable. It is long lasting. Now, it always remain functional only if it is correctly used. Secondly, it has the ability to renew itself. That is why we say land is durable. Always remember, it is durable only if it is correctly used. Right. Another economic characteristic, it varies in production potential. Now, various characteristics will determine how productive the soil is. A soil that is less fertile will produce less production. And a soil that is more fertile produce more production, right? A rocky soil will produce less. A loam soil will produce more, right? Another economic characteristic that is the value of land. The land appreciates, meaning its value increases. But again, the value of land depends on a number of factors, such as the location of that specific or particular land. Where is it located, right? Is it closer to the market, right? Does it have the ability to produce, right? If it is a fertile soil, obviously its value will be high. If it is less fertile, obviously its value will be low. But at the end of the day, the value of land appreciates with time. Right? Our last economic characteristic, land is subject to the law of diminishing returns. This is the law. It is subject to the law of diminishing returns. So you need to understand that when it comes to this law, of which is the law of diminishing returns, firstly, you should be able to state it. Secondly, you should be able to provide the implication or the explanation of this law, right? Now, before we even provide explanation or implication, let us state the law. Now, this economic characteristic that says land is subject to the law of diminishing returns, it states that an increase in input will result to an increase in output until a certain point is reached. And that point is referred to as maximum yield. But further increase in input will decrease the output. Let us state the law again. It states that an increase in input, when we put something or when we invest, the output will increase up until it reaches a certain point, right? But when we continue increasing the input, that increase in input will result to a decrease in output. Now, this law of diminishing returns, it teaches us farmers on when to stop applying the input. When to stop applying the input. Once we have reached the maximum yield, there is no need on continuing applying the input. Let us make an example or a scenario. We know that when we want to grow crops or when we want to grow maize, number one, we need the fertilizer. Let's just make fertilizer as our input. We need the fertilizer. And we know that the fertilizer contains nutrients, various nutrients that are responsible for growth of these maize or crops, right? But when we look at the output, we look at the production. In order to get the maize or the production, we need the fertilizer. Now, when we apply the fertilizer on the soil, what happens to our crops? They grow, right? Keep on adding the fertilizer, they will grow up until they reach a certain point of which is maturity. But once we keep on adding the fertilizer, what will happen to our maize? It will start going down, right? That will start decreasing the production. Meaning, once we have reached the maximum point or the maximum yield, there is no need for us to continue adding the input or the fertilizer. This goes to water as an input or other resources as well that act as input when growing crops or raising livestock. We add the input and we keep on adding. Once the maximum yield has been reached, we then stop adding the input, right? We don't continue adding the input, because if we continue adding the input, what will happen to our production? It will start decreasing. At this point of our graph, this is our productive phase, where adding the input or adding the fertilizer, it increases the growth. And this is the point where we have reached the maximum yield, where we need to stop applying the input. But once we continue applying the input, what happens to our production? It starts decreasing. This law of diminishing returns, it teaches us on when to stop applying the input, right? So these are our economic characteristics of land. Right. Now, let us say, as a farmer, you have degraded the soil, where you have applied multiple malpractices, where you were burning the soil, overusing inorganic fertilizers, right? Over irrigating, and you have degraded. What can you do to improve or increase land productivity? There are different methods that one can use to increase the productivity. And these are the techniques, these are the methods. Method number one, a farmer can adapt to scientific methods, where you apply the use of technology. The farmer has to adapt to scientific method, where you adapt to technology. Secondly, a farmer can improve water management, where you use different methods of irrigation, such as drip, sprinkler, etc., etc. Right? Number two, a farmer can consolidate uneconomical farm units. Now, what does consolidation mean? It simply means here you are combining. You are combining smaller farm units to create a single large farm unit. This is done to reduce the cost and to reduce the management. So it's very easy to manage a single large piece of land than to manage small or multiple small pieces of land. That is consolidation. It makes management very easy or easier, and it also reduces the cost. Right? Another one, you can restore land potential. How can you restore land potential? Number one, by doing what is known as the soil analysis. Checking the nutrients that are available in the soil and nutrients that are not available in the soil. Those that are available, you don't apply them through the fertilizer. But those that are available, you apply them through the fertilizer. And you can also add what is known as the organic matter. As we all know that organic matter plays a major role on the soil's fertility. Right? The last one, instead of using monocropping, you can apply what is known as crop rotation. And crop rotation is grade 10's work. Now, what is crop rotation? A practice whereby we grow different crops on the same piece of land year after year. Why? We all know that different crops, they use different nutrients from the soil, right? Number two, you can apply what is known as intercropping, meaning instead of using monocropping, you can opt for crop rotation or you can opt for intercropping. What is intercropping? growing different crops on the same piece of land at the same time. Why? Because different crops, they use different nutrients from the soil. So these are the techniques, these are the methods that farmers need to apply when restoring or when increasing the productivity of land, making sure that more products are produced, we have high production in order for us to sell more and make money or profit. I hope you understand that. So learners, this is your activity that is based on the land as a production factor. So I'll just give you 10 minutes to just write and complete. In fact, not even 10, 5 minutes to write and complete this activity, right? Remember, it is not based on all production factors, but specifically land as a production factor. Now, let's get into it. Now, number one of the activity, you are expected to read the description, right, and answer the questions. Now, soil may be damaged, but cannot be destroyed. That is the description. So all your answers should link with the description above. Right, 1.1, you are expected to indicate an economic characteristic of land represented by the statement above, not just any economic characteristic, but the one depicted or the one represented above. 1.2, state any two other economic characteristics of land apart from the one mentioned above, right? 1.3, name 3 methods that can be used to improve soil productivity. So you only have 5 minutes. Let's get into it. We will come back. Welcome back, learners. Now let us look at our activity 1.4 or under land as a production factor. Now let us go to our 1.1, or before we go to our 1.1, let us look at the description that was provided. Soil may be damaged, but cannot be destroyed. Right? 1.1, remember we said your answers should be based on the description, and you should answer based on the allocation marks. So for 1 mark, you provide 1 answer, 2 marks, 2 answers, 3 marks, 3 answers. Now let us go to 1.1. Indicate an economic characteristic of land represented by the statement above. By the statement above. You don't create your own, but you need to indicate an economic characteristic depicted on the statement above, right? And the answer for that question is land is indestructible. Remember we said land cannot be destroyed, but it can be degraded. Why? Because it has the ability to renew itself. So for 1 mark, we only expect you to write land is indestructible, right? Now for 1.2, state any other economic characteristics of land apart from the one mentioned on the statement above. Any other 2 economic characteristics, right? And then the answer for that question, land is limited, or arable land is limited, or agricultural land is limited. You can also write land is durable, or land is subject to the law of diminishing returns, or the value of land appreciates over time. Land is found in a specific environment or location. You can also add land varies in production potential, right? You can add that economic characteristic as well. Now let us go to 1.3 on our activity. Right? Our 1.3 is expecting you, or we expect you, to name 3 methods or techniques that can be used to improve soil productivity, making sure that there is high production at the end of the day. Remember, soil can be degraded. So what are other methods that we as farmers can use to improve or increase the land productivity after it has been degraded? Answers for that question. Number 1, you apply water management, right? Remember, we said through irrigation, where you will need to harvest water using different containers such as water tanks, and then you will be able to irrigate. And one may ask, what is irrigation? The artificial watering of plants, right? Number 2, consolidation of uneconomical farm units. Remember, we said having a large or a single large piece of land to grow maize is better than having multiple smaller farm units to grow land. That reduces cost, and it also results to better management, right? Number 3, a farmer may adapt to scientific methods, such as adapting or applying the use of technology. Right? Number 4, a farmer may restore land potential. Remember, by restoring the land potential, you can firstly do soil analysis, and then to check or evaluate the availability of nutrients in the soil. Which nutrients are available and which ones are not available? Those that are not available should be applied or provided through the fertilizer, just to prevent nutrient deficiency and nutrient toxicity. Why? Why? Nutrient deficiency and toxicity decrease production. The last one, changing cropping practices and farming system. Now, when it comes to changing cropping practices and farming systems, we speak of the crop production. Remember, we said you don't have to use monocropping, but rather you can apply crop rotation or intercropping just to increase the productivity. And also to reduce overgrazing, just to add, you can apply what is known as rotational grazing, where a farm may be divided into 4 camps, and then animals or farm animals are allowed to graze on a single camp. And then on the next season, they move on to the next camp. So these are the methods of increasing land productivity, making sure that we have more product, making sure that we have high production. When we have high production, we will have more money, and we will be able to make profit. So this is your homework that is read as follows. Different measures may be applied by a farmer to increase the production output and productivity of the farm per hectare. So you are expected to read the statement and be able to answer the questions. Now, learners are expected, or you are expected, to indicate the measure to improve land productivity as indicated by one of the following statements. You do not create your own, you don't create your own, but every answer should align with the statements below. Right, 2.1, combining grain crops and leguminous crops. 2.2, using a larger field rather than individual smaller plots to cultivate. 2.3, very water pipes to reduce damage and leaks. 2.4, determine the type and amount of fertilizer to use for a crop. So you need to provide different measures to improve the land productivity, depicted by the following statements for 1 mark. So homework solutions or activity solutions will be discussed when we come back on our next lesson. Now, let us look at, or let us unpack our today's lesson. Our today's lesson was based on the production factors, but specifically the land. Now, we're able to define the production factors, of which are resources used to produce outputs. Output being the production, right? And then land was our main topic, or was our subtopic, right? Land as a piece of ground used to grow or used for agricultural processes or production. We also looked at the functions of land, where land provides space for crops to grow, a medium for crops to grow, where land provides food for humans and animals, supply raw materials, supply different minerals, act as a collateral, and even provide space needed for agricultural activities. Remember, we said when it comes to that, we are able to build factories where different agricultural products may be processed, moving from being primary products to secondary products and to tertiary products into easily consumable commodities, where we change orange and produce orange juice, or where we dry fruits into dried fruits, right? And we also looked at the economic characteristics of land. Land, as it contributes much on our economy, right? Number one, we said agricultural land is limited. Why? Because most of the land is reserved for human settlement. Most of the land is occupied or is for urban development. We all know that there is land that is occupied by schools, land occupied by malls, land occupied by clinics. So it's not only for agriculture, but for other purposes as well. We also discussed land being indestructible, that land can be degraded, but it can never be destroyed. Why? Because land has the ability to renew itself through soil formation, right? Number three of our economic characteristic, we said land is restricted, meaning not every soil has the ability to grow crops. Crops only grow on certain types of soil. And we all know in agriculture, we speak of loam soil, a soil that is dark in color, a soil that is black in color. We also discussed that land is found in a specific environment or location, meaning that land is fixed. It cannot be moved, right? We also discussed that land is subject to the law of diminishing returns. We said that law teaches us on when to stop applying inputs. Once the maximum yield has been reached, once we have high production, there is no need for us to continue applying the input, because further increase in input will result to a decrease in output, meaning we will decrease our production. And once the production has been decreased, there will be no product. And once we have no product, we will have nothing to sell. And then we also discussed that land or production potential of land, it varies. Meaning not every land has the ability to produce. A soil that is less fertile produce less crops than a soil that is more fertile, right? And after we discussed the different methods or techniques of increasing the land productivity, where we adapt to scientific methods, we apply water management, we apply different practices of growing crops, such as crop rotation and intercropping. We do soil analysis. We consolidate the uneconomical farm unit by combining all smaller farm units and create a single large farm unit, right? So that is our lesson for today, or this was our lesson for today. Now, let us unpack on our next lesson, or let us do just a small preview on our next lesson. So on our next lesson, remember, we are not done with our production factors. We are still doing production factors. And on our next lesson, our main focus will be on the labor, right? On the work done, right? We will be discussing different types of laborers, factors that decrease labor productivity, right? Methods of increasing labor productivity, legislations, and also the contract, right? So when we come back, just look at these before our next lesson, and then you will have a better understanding when we come back. So thank you so much. And I just hope you continue learning. And always remember, economics is part of agriculture. Why? Because we are not just raising animals, but we are raising them just to sell and make profit. So we need this type of topic, or we need this area of knowledge. So see you when we come back. Bye.